Now that's significant. The Market Research Podcast.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining us on this latest episode of Now That's Significant, a market research podcast. This is your host, Michael Howard, the Head of Marketing at Infotools. Today, we're joined by Alex Culshaw, Head of Qualitative Research at SparkMR. Alex has 20 years research experience in both public and private sectors, in particular the healthcare, B2B and consumer industries. He is experienced in using traditional and new methods to bring rich and actionable insights to leading brands such as 3M, SC Johnson, Husqvarna, Nestlé, and many others. Alex specialises in online market research communities and the commercial application of qualitative research, including models, frameworks for interpreting results. Thanks for joining us on the show, Alex.
Great to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. So, Alex, what's the most significant thing you're going to tell us today?
So I think really the four things that I want to talk about tonight is around qualitative research and in particular the role of insight communities, not just how effective they can be, but also some of the pitfalls that can come with them. So online qualitative research is obviously seeing a massive boom, partly accelerated by COVID, which is a great thing. You know, I don't know, maybe 90% of research is done online now. But with that opportunity also comes a few dangers. So from my own experience, from the team's experience, I think we've identified, well, in this case, three particular pitfalls that we've seen with our clients, just how to recognize them and perhaps more importantly, how to deal with them as well.
Cool, looking forward to it. So can we start a little bit more about your background, perhaps, your areas of expertise in SparkMR, just to set the scene for the conversation today?
Yeah, absolutely. So just in terms of myself, so as you say, I've been working in research across a variety of sectors for, well, over 20 years now. Being a qual researcher, I can't quite remember the number. You know, it's just some time. But yeah, I think ultimately I've always worked in research. Started off in the Home Office in the UK, so very social focused research, in particular community safety and crime reduction. Moved away from that late noughties into pharma, had some time in pharma, and then moved beyond that from pharma into consumer and B2B and kind of medical devices. So I've seen a whole load of research across a whole load of different sectors. And I think what I've done is bring and learn from each of those different experiences, carry across knowledge into the new role. So I've got a really great grounding and solid understanding of the real world of research. Office, then moved into pharma research, as I say, which really kind of introduced me to a whole load of new methods. In addition, the much more of the commercial world, and then beyond that, kind of deepen my knowledge, as I say, into the B2B and consumer worlds, which again just opened up a whole load of different areas and ecosystems, one might say, in terms of different research that's out there. So in terms of where I am now, so I work for Spark Market Research. I'm head of qualitative research there. I was brought in firstly to help cement all the great work that the team's already done, but then also just to help sharpen up our proposition and bring a bit more direction in terms of some of the things that we want to do. As an aside, we've got some new things that we want to launch next year, so we're actively working on those. So Spark Market Research themselves, actually based out of Dublin in Ireland, with a UK office here in Leeds in the UK. We work across many sectors, but we do have particular specialisms in FMCG, finance and utilities, whole range of global and local clients. As I say, we do qual and quant research. I'm head of qualitative research, so obviously we do a lot of communities. That's one of our specialisms. From the quant side, we do a whole range of ad hoc and whatever, but tracking is what we would say is our particular tracking studies is what we would say is our particular sweet spots from a quant perspective. And then just in terms of interest from Spark Market Research, we have a really nice mix of specialists like myself and my colleagues in terms of research specialists, but also core staff who have spent time client side. They really know exactly what research means, what it needs to be, what it needs to look like to really have an impact for clients on their side, and they help share that through the business. And we're also part of a wider group of companies within the umbrella of Audience Collective is the overall name, but within that, we kind of cover the whole range of marketing disciplines. So we have sister companies that work that specialise in branding, social media, SEO specialists. We also have a specialist student division as well, who focus on the student journey, student experience, student onboarding, and so on.
Yeah, that's the future, I guess.
I'm the future. I think I keep telling myself that. Maybe I'm not anymore.
Well, we help shape it. So how's that? I mean, one thing that I've just been doing in my research for this is you mention often agile problem solving for market researchers. So that's the thing that you come in and help them to do. How does that vary from traditional market research problem solving?
So to me, problem solving, and this is perhaps my original civil service home office bias, problem solving to me is almost a process from that original perspective. There was a lot of time going back in social research where there was guesswork is perhaps unkind, but the people weren't really looking at the root causes of problems. So what problem solving in that sense did was actually help people apply a bit of rigor, some methodology, some stages and some steps in a process to what they were doing. So in a way, that's the kind of classic problem solving. For me, agile problem solving is much more on the job. It's not necessarily about the client's problem. Agile problem solving to me is, bloody hell, we are doing a job here. Sorry, can I swear? Sorry.
It's fine.
So to me, agile problem solving is much more on the job. It's we're doing a research project. We haven't got the recruitment, we haven't got the numbers, this is going wrong, that's going wrong. It's actually kind of on the job, fixing it nice and quick, so it doesn't kibosh the whole project. We can then carry on and make sure that we still deliver what we need to the client.
And I guess innovation technology has helped enable that, hasn't it? So our ability to I guess see changes and tweaks help us to do that on the fly.
100%. I think I said earlier, 90%, probably more of market research now is online, and without tech, without the tools that we have in terms of kind of recruiting, scripting, being able to access people, market research would still, again, it's an exaggeration, but be in the dark ages. I think there's a lot to be said for face-to-face research, but it's not necessarily the future. What we need are tools and tech that are not only simple for us to use, whether it's building a community, building a platform, but critically for respondents and consumers to use. If it's difficult, then they're just not going to bother. If they need to spend a long time onboarding, if they need to go through this and that, then they're just going to say thanks, but no thanks. And then really the market research industry is dead. If we haven't got consumers, we've got no chance.
Very true. So you mentioned 3 common pitfalls, but we haven't actually discovered what they are regarding online qual research. Can you start off with number 1, please?
So the first one I'd like to talk around is basically activity creep. And this is something we've seen quite frequently with our clients, especially as we've made this transition from the classic focus group to, as you say, a more tech enlivened research environment in terms of insight communities. And what we see is that we can design a really great research solution, insight community. We manage to sell it into the clients. But what happens then is that they then sell it into, or they can sell it into their business, and everybody wants a piece of it. So, marketing want this bit answered, sales want that bit answered, whoever else wants all these different questions answered. So actually we end up with what was a fairly succinct and tight research brief, expanding, transforming into something that was kind of almost octopus-like. It's got millions of legs and no end, and actually this isn't what we were brought in for. The danger of that is twofold, really. Firstly, that we just overwhelm respondents. I mentioned earlier around consumers not wanting to engage because it's just too onerous for them, the classic respondent burden. But then also as well, in terms of our own analysis, and that's something we'll think around later as well, that the analysis and the work involved for us just goes crazy. So this activity creep is really something that, for me, it's essential to keep an eye on right from the start of a project. And I think there's a couple of ways we can do that. Firstly, there's the classic client management. I think as researchers, we should be seen, I don't think we always see ourselves as this, but we should be seen as obviously research experts. Our clients are experts in whatever field it is: shampoo, eggs, toilet paper, doesn't matter. They come to us because we're experts, so we need that confidence to say, hang on a sec, this isn't going to work because of X, Y, and Z. So there's an element of client management there. But then also, I think as well, we can think a bit more cleverly, if that's a word, around, okay, if we have got all these additional requests, these additional questions that are coming in, are there any different ways in which we can answer them? So without putting them into the insight community and overwhelming the insight community, can we instead look at some adjunct depths to answer some of the questions? Can we instead maybe think about a pre-task that we might want to do to kind of limit what we're asking people to do in the actual insight community? This was something that happened to us not long ago, just as a recent example. We were working for a bathroom company. They were looking to expand their marketing operation. Really interestingly, I spoke around client challenges before. They wanted to do focus groups. We persuaded them that actually that wasn't the right fit for them. That wasn't the right methodology for them. They weren't going to get the insight that they needed there. So we persuaded them and convinced them to do an insight community. And yeah, they went for it the whole hog. Everybody was involved. Everybody wanted to have a piece of it, which was great. It was really fulfilling for us. However, what that did do was just mean that everything grew legs. There were extra requests. The original task guide as such grew and grew and grew. And we could see from our expert position that actually this is going to be too much for respondents. They literally haven't signed up for this. So to help manage that, we started thinking a bit laterally. Okay, well, if there are some questions here that the client wants answering, can we do those in a different way? And a couple of ways we did that were, firstly, thinking around some of the, I'll say demographics. It wasn't quite demographics because it's around bathrooms and houses and budget. So it wasn't the kind of classic age demographic in a way, but we dropped some of those into the screener to give the client a feel for some of those elements that they were interested in. And then also as well, from the kind of other end, they were interested in different brands. So we did some social media monitoring, some different perceptions and awareness of alternative brands and companies in the same space, just to help save space in terms of the insight community and maximise what we're getting there.
Really cool. Okay, so I mean, it does definitely seem like a common issue that crops up, and it's not just something that market researchers face. It's all walks of life, isn't it? So just being really focused on a task and going hard on that.
Yeah, and that's a really nice way of putting it. And do you know what? I think sometimes there's the tendency for researchers to think, oh, the client's paying, they're our masters, we have to do this, we have to do that. Actually, if they want the best results, they need to listen to us, they need to accept us as experts and understand that we ultimately know how to answer their questions in the best way. That isn't to say in any way, stretch or form that we're not listening to them. What we're doing is saying, okay, you want an answer to 10 questions, we're going to answer 5 of them this way, 3 of them that way, 1 of them that way, and 1 of them the other way, which I think is, I think, more beneficial both for us and them.
The old litmus test of would I sit down and do all of this, all of that you're asking of me, myself in my personal life is quite a good thing to consider.
100%, yeah.
So how about the second pitfall then?
Yeah, so what we're thinking around here is really when insights don't hit the button. So we all know that there is a huge amount of work that goes into setting up insight communities that involves a whole range of different people as well. You know, you've got the proposal team, you've got the recruitment team, you've got the actual research team. You know, there's a whole infrastructure of work on, and then all of a sudden we're live. So, you know, this is brilliant. Here we go. There's a tendency potentially to kind of sit back and think, okay, job done. All the insights will start rolling in now, and you know, we just need to pick it up at the end. Actually, what we found in the past is that when we haven't quite framed things correctly, when we haven't quite got the terminology right, or whatever it is, that actually some of those early insights that come in don't necessarily hit the mark. They aren't necessarily pressing the client's button. Obviously, with insight communities as well, clients are in the virtual back room, so they can see things. So, you know, it's obviously a very makes us very alert to everything, real danger that if you let them carry on, then a week, 2 weeks down the line, when the community's finished, you're going to end up with, yes, a lot of information, but perhaps a lot of information that is framed slightly wrongly, that is just slightly pointing in the wrong direction. So to me, I think there's a couple of ways that we can deal with this. Firstly, is around, we spoke around agile earlier, a quick agile dummy platform. And I'm not necessarily saying that we need to script a platform here. I do have to say that scripting platforms is getting easier and easier and easier. You know, the particular platform that we use is really intuitive, really easy to build. You know, I love the whole drag and drop idea. You know, it just kind of makes life easy. That said, we don't need to go the whole hog of building a platform. What we can do is just a classic kind of pro forma template discussion guide, and just go and test it with a few people. You know, we can do it via Zoom. It doesn't have to be done face to face, and that'll give us a sense of the different directions and senses that people are taking from the questions that we're asking. So piloting is always it's the classic research thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think beyond that, and what's really interesting is why consumers want to be part of a research project. Often we ask them this in terms of the whether it's a focus group, whether it's a community, and quite often you get the typical answer. You know, I want to help develop new products. I want to hear about what's in the pipeline, what's going on there. I want to have my voice heard, and I think all of that is really, really valid. But I think as well, there's something to be said for understanding what the value exchange might be in terms of all of this. Yes, we are giving people an incentive and a thank you payment, and that's fine. But actually as well, for them, it could be that they're there for information, not necessarily around new products, but personal information. How do I deal with this situation? How do I find out more information about this, that, and the other? So for us, what we've done is try and facilitate this value exchange. Try and think around, okay, what is it above and beyond, you know, maybe 15 minutes of fame that people want to be involved in communities for, and really try and bring that to the fore. So often in communities, you know, we'll have private tasks or unbiased tasks. What we love is making sure that we get some discussions in there, making sure that we get that interaction between people. So they're not just speaking to me as a researcher, they're actually speaking to each other and getting those different ideas, tips, and pieces of information from each other. A couple of examples of this which kind of spring to my mind. We did a recent piece of research in the US online community with novice investors. So you know how we can all now invest on our phone. there's different apps and whatever, which just makes it easy. We don't have to go through Wall Street anymore. So we did a piece of research for a client out there in the States who wanted to understand really what the behaviours were that people were doing, what it was like to be a novice investor, what the pressures were, what the drivers were, and as well, what the different types of resources and information resources that people were accessing were. So we had a whole series of private tasks and activities for people, but as well, we also asked people, okay, if you want a tip for trading, where do you go? Which is the best website? Which is the best app? Excuse me. It was fascinating to see the interaction and people literally come to life, with exclamation marks and, kind of quick responses when they were bouncing off each other in terms of different ideas that, oh, I love this trader. I love this app. This one's got the fastest information. This one's got the best tips. So, for them, that value exchange above and beyond giving us some of the information that we wanted was actually helping them in their own investment journeys. Similarly, as well, we did a piece of research in the UK, online insight community with my children are a bit more grown up now, so I'm kind of beyond this stage, but colicky babies, kind of how to handle and deal with colicky babies. It was a product test, actually. And yes, again, we had lots of different questions, tasks, activities, but where we got the most insight was actually the mums at 3, 4 in the morning, online on the phone. Oh my God, I've been up for 6 hours. Little baby Charlotte, Tommy won't stop crying. What do I do? And people were, engaged. The mums are engaging with each other. Try this, try that. And again, above and beyond the activities that we had, the questions that we had, they got that own information exchange to help them in their own personal lives. So I think for me, it's critical that in a way we think broader beyond the actual research objectives. What is it that really can help people engage?
No, it sounds really good. I mean, a focus group of mums talking about colicky babies isn't necessarily going to be the most productive per se, isn't it? But yeah, having that makes a lot of sense.
And that's, the beauty of insight communities, isn't it? That you're able to access, well, was it Heineken, was it Carlsberg, reach the parts that other beers can't reach. It's the classic thing. Yes, a focus group can be great for certain things, but I'm always surprised, and I don't know why I'm surprised, because I see it time and time again, about the level of insight, the depth, the richness, the emotion that people pour into online communities, and obviously the rawness of the insight that then gives the client, be it professional cleaners, mums, healthcare professionals, regular consumers, shoppers. People love it, and that is why we major on it, because it gives us some really great insight.
Cool. Okay, so thinking about these insights when they're not hitting the mark, what impact does that have on a market research team and perhaps its organization?
So when you say organization, you mean, for example, Spark Market Research, or do you mean the client organization?
So client facing, so corporate teams.
Yeah. So in terms of insights not hitting the mark, it's multifold, really. From our perspective, there can be a loss of confidence. Actually, are we doing the job right here? Which we don't want that. So we need to make sure that we are hitting the mark. From a client perspective, potentially what we're looking at here is not only a poor return on investment. I'm sure they get something out of the research, but it wouldn't necessarily be what they wanted. Additionally, as well, I think it's probably something along the lines of their own reputation internally. Why can we trust, or why should we trust insights if insights are giving us not erroneous answers, but perhaps the answers that we didn't necessarily want to hear this time around? So given that insights or the reputation of insights has a checkered past. Let's be honest there. I think making sure that we can support our clients in taking the insights back to their business is invaluable.
Yeah, I think we often sell ourselves short at the same time as well. There's a lot of value that we do bring to the table, so trying to celebrate those wins as much.
Totally, it's that whole access around. That whole idea of us being experts, really trusting ourselves. And as I say, I've been working in market research 20 years, and being perfectly honest, throughout that 20 years, you do doubt yourself at times. You do think, oh, well, actually, am I just telling them stuff that they already know? Is this going to be interesting to them? Couldn't they do this themselves? But actually, in reality, they couldn't do what we do. I couldn't do what they do. They couldn't do what we do. So having that confidence to say, this is what we've heard, this is the way we've done it, is invaluable to them, to give them the confidence in turn to take to their own stakeholders.
For sure. Okay, so the last pitfall, and perhaps a piece of advice for avoiding it.
Yeah, so for me, this is a really interesting one. And in a way, perhaps the one I wanted to get to the most. Anybody who's ever done an online community, unless it's a really, kind of quick, agile, pre-task type thing, anybody who's done an online community, you're in the middle of it, you're moderating, you're doing snippets here and snippets there, and it doesn't feel an awful lot. But actually, when it comes to the end, you've got a whole load of insights there. I think I've called it the insights avalanche. You've asked them to do this, you've asked them to do that, you've asked them to take a video of this, take a picture of that, drag and drop this, put some emojis on that, and all of a sudden you think, blimey, how on earth am I going to analyze that? So for me, there's a couple of things that are really critical, because what we want to avoid is, those late nights, caffeine, coffee. That doesn't benefit anybody. What we want is a sensible plan here. So 2 ways of doing this, obviously very practically and pragmatically. What we'll be looking at is making sure that we've got the resource lined up, that we are confident in our resourcing and our capacity at the times that we need. Above and beyond that, what we find and what we do almost every time is adopt a framework. Now, a framework can be anything. It can sound a bit grand, it can sound a bit kind of mythical in a way. Ultimately, frameworks are really just things that help us condense and summarize and coalesce the information that we're finding. So from our perspective, and from my own experience, and this is why I wanted to touch on that earlier in terms of why it's been great to have my 20 years experience and see different things in different sectors and how they're used in different sectors, is that we can apply and adopt a whole load of frameworks. Some of them might come from behavioral science. You've got things like fuel and friction, EAST, COMBI. You've got others around design thinking. So you've got empathy maps, story arches, personas. You've got others around perhaps kind of more social realist evaluation. So here you're thinking around theories of change and logic models. But actually, all we're doing here is providing ourselves with an easy way of popping insights into different buckets that we don't necessarily know exactly what each bucket means yet, but we know that this question is going to relate to this certain objective idea, and we know that that is a perfect place in our framework for that. And I mentioned the novice research, the novice investor research that we did earlier, and we actually use the whole range of these different frameworks within that. We use fuel and friction to help understand what it was that encouraged their behaviour and what held back their behaviour, and where that could be impinged upon. So kind of classic behavioural science there. We also use personas to help bring these people to life. Our client had a sense of who they were, but hadn't seen the faces, hadn't seen the videos, hadn't seen how they'd invested. So we use personas there. And we also use different stages of competency. So I'm definitely not going to remember them. I'm not going to look them up, but there's the conscious incompetence, the incompetent conscious, whatever they all are. There's the 4 different ones. I'm not going to try and remember them at 10 o'clock at night. But just to help identify and situate who some of these novice investors were, and just understand, okay, we might have these 20 or so investors, but actually they all fall into 4 groups. Interestingly as well, that's obviously a very consumer type thing. Any framework, and this is truly from experience, well, I say any framework, but essentially frameworks aren't restricted to consumers and certain respondent types. We've used frameworks successfully in B2B, in consumer, in healthcare. They really fit across the whole range of things there.
Yeah, interesting. I think people do love a good framework, don't they? It's easy to have framework creep, even.
So touche. But they don't have to be overly complex. People hear about a framework and a model, and you think, oh, blinking heck, it's going to be really complex. One of the simplest ones that we use at Spark is just called What Cubed. Now, what is What Cubed? It's nothing that any researcher doesn't already know, but what we do is make sure that we kind of use it as a design rule, a rule of thumb, a rubric in terms of how we want to design our debriefs, presentations, feedback. And What Cubed essentially allows us to tell us, firstly, well, what's going on. Secondly, so what does that mean for the client? And then thirdly, now what? So in terms of what's happening, basically what are the insights? What's the story? In terms of so what, why is that relevant to our client? Why is it important to them? What does it mean for them? And then now what? The classic next steps, recommendations, jobs to be done. Actually just thinking around what we're hearing and dividing it up into simple elements and buckets just helps with our own sanity when we've got this avalanche of insights.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, while we're talking about pitfalls, and this may or may not come as a surprise to our listeners and maybe to you, Alex, especially since we're a technology company, we feel a big pitfall that people can fall into is removing the human element from our work. Technology is a huge enabler. It can do what we can't. It can't do what we can do best. Our thoughts, our creativity, our curiosity, etc. Those are innate to us. It sure can speed up a whole lot of processes, but there's always a role for us. It's a conscious decision that we're making as a technology provider for the market research sector. It's a guiding principle, if you will, for what we're developing. So with this in mind, maintaining the human element, do you have any thoughts on it in the sector?
Yeah, the human element for us is massive. In fact, the way we like to think around it is human truths. Uncovering human truths. That's a nice, simple way of bringing that human side into it for us.
And what do you mean by that? Can you let's dig into that a little?
Yeah, absolutely. So for us, human truths it works both ways. It's around us as researchers being humans, and then also our respondents, our consumers being humans. We know that clients are interested in behavior and attitudes and stories and narratives. And we also know that behavioral science as a paradigm in a way has had massive influence within the marketing world and more recently the market research world. What I would argue, though, is that not every single client is ready for full-on hardcore behavioral science. So for us, what we talk around is human truths. It's still behavior, it's still people's stories, but we're not, and I don't want to say blinded by science, because that's not fair to behavioral science, because I'm an advocate of behavioural science, but what we like to do is think around human truths almost as a way of adopting and applying behavioural science ideas and principles, perhaps in a slightly fluffy garb with some slippers on. It's not quite as hardcore.
Right.
So taking those two elements, as I say, for us, human truths are us as researchers connecting with people on a real human level, and also making sure that we are understanding people's real human behaviours without going too far down the scientific road, for want of a better word. In terms of ways in which we do that, obviously observation from an insight community is really easy, is really impactful, not just in terms of what we're seeing. If people are doing videos for us, whether it's a shop along, whether it's a video of the fridge, but also some of the things that we aren't seeing. So really making sure, and it sounds daft now I come to say it, that we open our eyes and we really appreciate everything that we are observing. Yes, we might want to think about what milk people have got in the fridge, but also let's think about what we're not seeing. Are we only seeing, and I don't know if this is a UK thing, full fat milk compared to skim milk? What is it that we might expect to see that we aren't seeing? So really, I think there's something around understanding and observing, both kind of on and off category and also in the wider context. Human truth is also around scenario setting. We all love to play games in our head and kind of put ourselves in different situations. So why not apply that and adopt that in market research? Let's put people into the futurescape it, if you were. Let's imagine that in the UK, Keir Starmer has been in power for 5 years after the next election. Let's transport people to that next place. How much does a pint of beer cost? How much does a pint of milk cost in that 5 years? What else has happened in that time? So really getting people to use their imagination, which, as we know, is one of the, both as researchers and consumers, one of the really important things in helping generate stories and narratives.
That would be quite an interesting activity to do, wouldn't it? You get some people would go quite wild and interesting.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? Why not let people go wild? There is nothing wrong with people telling us about unimaginable, seemingly infeasible ideas and options. It's not up to the consumer to tell us what the new product is. It's about them to give us the ideas and then us to interpret it with our clients, and for them to dial it back down and say, well, this bit can work and that bit can't work. So getting the imagination to run loose is a really human trait. Another element of this, and something that we do in our insight communities, is we're chatting on Zoom now. Let's put our faces in the insight community. Let's have an introductory, hi, I'm Alex, welcome to our insight community. Yes, as I said earlier, insight communities can give you great richness and rawness, but quite often we are just typing. So appreciating that we're not going face to face, let's put our face in there, making that human connection. We could have done this on the phone, but it's better to do this this chat like this. So why not adopt that and apply that in our insight communities? And then the final thing we do in terms of kind of human truths and trying to explore that more human side of things is move beyond one type of activity and one type of question line. And what I mean by that is, yes, as I say, typically we'll get people to do videos, drag and drop and whatever it is. But actually, in a community, we can do more than that with them. We can start to access the classic implicit thinking easily in a community. It's typically thought of as a quant methodology, and do you know what? It probably still is. But within a community, we can still devise and design a few tasks that get people to give us their gut instinct, to reveal their gut instinct, their immediate thoughts, by creating some shorter, snappier tasks that, for example, ask them to rate. We did a project around cereal bars, and we asked them to rate the cereal bars on different metrics. But it was very quick binary decision making. Is it expensive? Is it cheap? Is it tasty? Is it not tasty? Whatever it was, and combine that as well with some of the more discursive videos and stories that we were hearing.
Very cool. So I guess just on that, I guess you've got a mix of different methodologies as well. So you have that qual background. What have you learned from the quant side of things as that has progressed, I guess, in innovation, etc.? How has that helped sharpen what you're doing, and vice versa, I guess?
Yeah. Back when I was a junior researcher, I did used to do a bit of quant. I have been known to dabble in conjoints and max diffs. Probably not anymore. I'm kind of moving farther away from it. But I think, and it probably applies both ways. I think to me, one of the critical cross learnings is just around making sure that we are framing things correctly, and this goes back to the whole piloting issue as well, and making sure that we are testing questions and framing questions in the right way. If we frame them in the wrong way, if we're not clear, if we're asking too many questions in one go, then actually we're just going to get a jumble of answers. What we want to be doing is being very clear, very succinct in terms of what we're asking, and that's the beauty of technology, in that we can almost divide questions up, or almost quite literally. It's this screen and it's that screen, and actually help people think really clearly about some of the things that we're asking them to do, and some of the responses that we want them to give.
Cool. Okay, well, I think this conversation will definitely help our researchers to better navigate the online communities for qual research, a methodology which is certainly growing fast. Any final points, Alex, before we sign off?
I think just a couple of points that I would make. Firstly, one thing I've learned from qual, and you perhaps you've got more license to do this in qual, maybe, but perhaps a quantity might disagree with me. But from my perspective, maybe there is a bit more license, and that's really thinking about what's going to happen at the end, right at the start. And what I mean by that is, okay, what activities, what tasks can we build into our insight community at the start that's going to give us some really lovely outputs at the end for our client, whether that's videos, whether that's maps, whether that's, as I say, drag and drop annotations. Actually, what is going to make a good video montage, a good, ultimately, slide deck at the end? So really thinking around that end point when you're designing is one thing that I'm always conscious of, and I think would be an important point for people to remember. And then the other point I would say is around that human side of things. It sounds daft, you're human, I'm human, consumers are human. We don't need to have this false blockade, barrier between I'm a researcher and you're a respondent. Actually, we're all in this together. It's just that I'm doing what I'm doing and you're doing what you're doing. So let's put a human face on it. Let's connect in that way. One of the things we say at Spark is that we love to be professionally informal. That's both with our clients and with consumers. And by professionally informal, essentially what we're talking around there is, yes, we will give you the upsides and the downsides of whatever the project is, but we're also not going to be very straight-laced. We're not going to be totally kind of monotone. That isn't to say we go to the other side of things and be wacky and crazy. That isn't what we're saying at all. What we're saying is professionally informal. We'll work hard, we'll work with you, we'll work together with you, with our clients, and also with our consumers. And if we can put that human face on research through technology, through tools, through agile methodologies, then all of that is to the benefit of the insights that we generate for our clients.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and perspectives, Alex. I really appreciate it.
I don't think anybody ever said I've had wisdom before, so That will do me.
Nice. And a big thanks to our listeners as well for tuning in. If you have liked what you've heard today, feel free to check out SparkMR, subscribe to our podcast, leave a review perhaps, and even feel free to share it with others who might find it helpful as well. So until next time, thanks for listening to Now That's Significant.